Welcome to the CBRE Real Talk. As the global leader in commercial real estate services and investment, CBRE is delighted to host this series of conversations between our own sector experts and other leaders in real estate. Their insights will help to keep you at the forefront of the trends, challenges, and opportunities set to shape the future of our industry. We hope you enjoy being part of the dialogue.
Welcome to CBRE Real Talk. It's hard to believe how much and how fast our industry is changing. Who would have thought that we would move from buying tangible real estate assets to making purchases in the extended reality, or XR, the so-called real estate metaverse? Already in the real estate metaverse, buying virtual properties with cryptocurrencies and tokenization have become the industry buzzwords. Here in Hong Kong, Animoca's Ethereum-based The Sandbox has signed up multiple local partners from the entertainment, professional services, finance, real estate, and the gaming sectors to create a mega city, a virtual Hong Kong cultural hub. The question is, how much do the people or the companies that are considering this new way of buying and investing actually know about the details of what they're investing in? To understand more about this, today we're joined by Mr. James Wong, who is here to help us answer some of that and to understand more about these new concepts. As an executive director of both Kwok Land Investment Company Limited and the Chinney Group, he's both an industry leader and an expert in the field. After growing up in the US, Canada, and Hong Kong, James graduated from the University of Washington. He went on to gain a master's degree in information systems engineering from the Florida Institute of Technology and a Juris Doctor from the University of California, Hastings College of Law. Before joining his family business in 2010, James held positions as a lawyer at Toyota's e-discovery team in California and a tax lawyer at Baker McKenzie in Los Angeles and Hong Kong, as well as at PwC in San Francisco. Wow. So James, what an impressive background you have. And we're just so lucky to have you to join us today on CBRE's Real Talk podcast. Welcome. Let's dive right in, James. So I'm sure virtual real estate and virtual currencies are still a mystery to many people. Would you mind just starting with an overview of what they actually mean?
Okay. So there are, it's important to keep in mind that virtual real estate and virtual currencies are two separate things. So let me approach these one at a time. Virtual currency, sometimes called cryptocurrencies, or sometimes even called digital currencies, and we can get into the differences on those later if you'd like, are basically ways that people are talking about making payment systems easier. And to some people, you hear the words Bitcoin, Ethereum, even like Solana, Aave. These are all basically different ways of breaking apart our money system and using different features of money and put it into the digital realm. It's part of the digitization that you see of our overall economy right now. If you're in a digital economy, kind of forking over $100 bill is not practical. Credit cards are one way, debit cards are another way, but then banks and Visa, MasterCard get involved. Cryptocurrency are kind of a way that it's kind of like a peer-to-peer way of passing currency between people. Now, currency, the old definition of money, right? It's a store of value. It's an intermediate of exchange. It's a way of doing accounting. Digital currencies tend to challenge the ways that we think about money. Virtual real estate is a different thing. So virtual real estate actually has been around a lot longer than people think. Way back in the 90s, there was a game called Sim Life, SIM Life, where people talked about sort of going online and then having an avatar and then living your life through this avatar. From Sim Life came this novel called Snow Crash by a guy called Neil Stephenson. And in Snow Crash, the people in the novel led a life that was online as well as a life that was offline. And the online life was way better than the offline life. And so basically virtual real estate is a way of trying to capture that sort of online life. But instead of using avatars, people are going to try to be real. The reason why I say it's not as cutting edge as people would like to think is because actually anybody who's been a gamer, if you've been in the world of Zelda, if you play Fortnite, in fact, League of Legends or one of those other ones, there's entire worlds in there that are very, very similar to what people are talking about the metaverse.
Thanks, James. In your view, what role can real estate metaverse and real estate tokenization play in our industry?
So, again, these are two separate issues. Let's begin with real estate metaverse, okay? I think real estate metaverse is, okay. The way I see it, let me go back. Both of these have one thing in common, is that this is very hot topics. Everybody has a bit of FOMO involved, right? Fear of missing out. So it's just like, I need to get into that. Well, hang on. Real estate metaverse, you can hang on. The virtual currencies, you can probably dip your toe in. So in the real estate metaverse, the big problem is that it's a digital world. Which world you walk into is going to be different for everybody. The Facebook meta world is going to be different than if Google sets one up, the Google, Apple, and then Apple's going to set one up. And then all these different, if you're currently in Pokemon world right now, and there was a time Niantic created this whole Pokemon craze. Which world is going to be the one that everybody is going to be in? Sandbox, you mentioned there's another one. It's not clear who the emerging winner is yet. And so the way you think about this is you're in a video game, and in a video game, you can spend money and you can buy stuff, right? I think that's probably the best way to look at real estate in the metaverse. It's just stuff you can buy inside a game. It's a real life game. I mean, there's not like, you have to go and defeat the boss or, you have to go and find this treasure. So it's a world, and it's kind of looking like a video game, and you can spend some money inside it. That's probably the best way to look at the real estate metaverse. Virtual currencies, on the other hand, and tokenization is a way of doing finance that is, and I would say an additional way of doing finance, particularly in the real estate sector, that is beyond our regular fixed income, regular corporate lending, our regular fundraising in shares. I think what is happening in the tokenization of finance is we're taking digitization of finance into a different level. It's not going to be the usual guys that are controlling let's say the doors to investment anymore. And what virtual currencies, what DeFi, what tokenization does is it kind of democratizes finance in a certain way. But with democratization comes risks as well.
So James, I've got a question on tokenization in a second, but can I just jump back to the metaverse? I mean, you and I have known each other for a long time, and we understand how real estate in the real world is derived value is through scarcity of supply and increased demand. How is that going to happen in the metaverse?
And it doesn't. And I think that's one of the big problems, right? You have basically, so the metaverse is just basically software, right? You have, in theory, somebody who's capable of creating infinite amounts of real estate. What they're trying to do in places like the metaverse, so Meta, the Facebook metaverse, Meta, is they're saying that, what we're going to do is we're going to control the gateways. If you come in, everybody's going to come in through the same gateway. And because you're coming through that gateway, I'm going to sell you billboards. So Nike can go and advertise. But everybody's walking through that same gateway. So the way to think about it is, I guess, a landing page, on a website. And so the metaverse per se is kind of like, at the moment, a bit like buying banners on web pages. But in terms of what you're saying, the way that we traditionally think about real estate being a finite resource, yeah, that's not true. That's not real.
Thank you. It's a great way of sort of summarizing how to derive the value or not. Just going back to tokenization, can I ask you, do you think real estate tokenization will become a mainstream approach to investment?
Oh, very much. So our own company, Kwok, is about to launch a token. So what is a token? Let's just go there, okay? So basically, a token is a way of marking that you own something, and that can be either equity or that could be debt. Just like a piece of paper in the olden days, I have a share of stock or I have a bond. Well, now we've got a digital version of this, and that's a token. So the reason why tokens are interesting and the reason why people are moving to them is two reasons. Number one, people aren't as much into carrying around paper anymore. But number two, the token itself offers ways of making payments. So let me give you an example. When you take a look at, there's a New York building right now. It's the first building, I think it's in Harlem somewhere. It's the first building to be listed on a public exchange in the United States. That's only one building. It's an office building, okay? Then you take another thing, which is in the United States now, you can get a mortgage using cryptocurrency. I think it's Ethereum based. I don't think it's Bitcoin based. I think it's Ethereum based. But there are actually lenders which will lend you mortgages based upon cryptocurrencies, which is, I guess, it's simplified. This is way oversimplified, but a simplified way of looking at currencies is that it's another foreign currency. It's like the Swiss yen or the Swiss franc, or the Japanese yen or the Swiss franc, or the euro. It's just another currency conversion, way more volatile. Okay, a 0.5% movement in the yen in a day is gigantic. A 50% movement in cryptocurrency in a day is normal. Okay, but some people like to take that risk. Okay, so what we're beginning to see, and I think what's going to be in the very near future, is the merger between these crypto lending and sort of individual small property finance merged together. And the way that crypto or that tokenization is going to make that happen is because it's going to create these ways of doing finance that is not currently possible. Like, for example, we as a company are thinking about creating a token that is like a debt. So instead of issuing a debenture, which is a piece of paper, we will offer investors a choice between, they can take, I'm just going to make a number up, 4.5% nominal, and they can take that in what we call fiat, which is regular Hong Kong dollars or US dollars, or they can take it in Bitcoin or Ethereum, in which case every half year we will pay them a fixed amount of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then the risk is on the investor, right? They're going to either get 4.5% currency, which they have to choose on day one, or they take, I think this is 0.12 Bitcoins. And if they take 0.12 Bitcoins, that can be either worth 4.5% or 45% based on the volatility, right? And that's only possible in the token world. We can't do that on paper. It doesn't work.
Could be big swings, big upside as well.
Yeah. So I try not to use this analogy too much, but people say that some of these finance instruments are a bit like going into a casino and gambling. Okay. Yeah, we try not to do that because in gambling, you lose your capital. In these kind of situations, we try very hard not to lose capital. The only thing we're screwing around with is the income. Right?
And how do you think that this will take shape in the near future? I mean, do you see this sort of rolling out imminently?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's happening everywhere. I think the situation in the Ukraine, I hate to bring up a war in all the way over in Europe, but what happened in the war in Ukraine is you're watching kind of two very interesting wars going on. You have the war on the ground, and then you have the war in currencies. Basically, the United States and the rest of the world have basically declared this war against Russia with all the sanctions, with the sort of oil cutoffs, with the, you're watching all kinds of weird things. I mean, the most recent one I watched, which is starting to get a little bit ridiculous, is that the Boston Marathon, so my family lives in Boston, the Boston Marathon recently banned any Russian from running in the Boston Marathon as part of sanctions.
Wow. So even getting into sport now, that's always a bit of a worry.
Which is kind of, okay. Yeah. But anyway, so what's going on is you're watching a currency war fight, and you're watching Russia, and the reason why China, they're sort of kind of playing with each other is because there's enough of an economy outside of Western Europe and North America that Russia and China are really thinking about creating a different way of doing business with each other that do not involve the US dollar. Okay, and people always talk about China not joining the West in this. But I remind them, Mexico, which is in North America, India, Turkey are also not part of this, grand coalition sanctioning Russia. And it's because these countries are actually sort of interested in forming a different different currency world that doesn't involve the US dollar. Now, it's not clear for sure, it's not going to be the ruble. It's probably not going to be the yuan. It's definitely not going to be the rupee. Okay. So how do these guys transact if they don't transact in US dollars? And one very easy way of doing this is using stable coins in the crypto world. So what happens in the stablecoin world is that there is a coin that's issued in the digital realm that is backed by $1 or 10 yuan or 50 rupees, whatever it is, right? And I really think that in the near future, we're talking in the next 2 or 3 years, there will be a digital currency that's basically funded by these other big governments that are trying to do an end run around the US dollar. And let me kind of make one other point about tokenization. I said earlier that there's a difference between digital currency and cryptocurrency. And the difference is that the cryptocurrency world is a bit more libertarian. It's a decentralized. Nobody's in control. Everybody kind of votes just with their dollars. There's not a bank. There's not a Federal Reserve that actually controls how the movement of the cryptocurrencies move around. Digital currencies, on the other hand, are government-based currency. So instead of issuing $100 in a piece of paper, they're going to issue $100 in currency, but it's still controlled by the Federal Reserve. Okay, and different banks right now different Federal Reserves are talking about creating these kind of digital currencies. China, the digital yuan that you hear about in China, is a form of digital currency, but it's not cryptocurrency because it's not decentralized.
Thank you, James. That's really sort of clarified a lot of sort of questions that a lot of people have had around this topic. I guess, finally, do you have any tips for people that are looking to venture into this space or want to invest into this area? What would be some of the advice that you would give them?
Okay, so the metaverse is kind of new. Let's start with digital. Let's talk about digital and cryptocurrencies. Okay, there's a ton. You can go from TikTok all the way down to, there's lessons from places like BlockGeek. I recommend a website if you're just curious about cryptocurrencies called Rocket Fuel. And they have a really fun way of trying to explain what's going on with crypto. And you can also from there get a little bit of the feel for what digital currencies look like. So, what would happen in a world where the money continues to be controlled by Federal Reserve, or in a world where there's no Federal Reserve and the money just moves around freely. Okay, and Rocket Fuel talks about that issue in a very interesting way. There's a guy called Robert Kiyosaki who used to do this series called Rich Dad Poor Dad way back in the 90s. And he's partly responsible with Rocket Fuel. So it's a very libertarian bent on looking at this. If you're interested in looking at this, I would highly recommend that website to start. If you're at all interested in dipping your toe in the water, Coinbase, I won't use Binance, but probably Coinbase, even FTX is worth thinking about. Coinbase itself has a large number of tutorials that talk about what cryptocurrencies is, how you invest in it. You throw a couple $1,000 in there, it's probably a fun way of participating in the cryptocurrency world. In the metaverse side, I would actually think of it like you're playing a video game, right? Almost every video game, Candy Crush, okay, being one. You start playing Candy Crush, you just start running up money through there. And metaverses are the same. So, if I think at the moment, if investors are looking at the metaverse, think of it as you're just playing a video game and throw some money in there as you would do in a video game. Don't expect any returns whatsoever.
And then I guess in the tokenization, it's still relatively new, but it's coming along. But I guess you're saying don't bet your house on it. Don't, put a whole lot in there. So just be careful.
Yeah. The one area we haven't covered, Tom, is NFTs, non-fungible tokens, right? So non-fungible tokens are interesting. So not only have we started digitizing real estate and digitizing currency, we're now digitizing art. And the NFTs is interesting in the art world in the sense that it's a different medium for artists to sort of sell creative products. And I would probably say that on the token side, the one area that I don't read very well is because I'm not really very much in the art world, but if you're an artist and you're looking at NFTs, whether you're a painting art, what they call a visual artist, a sound artist, a recording artist, or even these days they have kind of different digital forms of art. The NFT is an interesting world to take a look at, and the valuations there are about as clear-cut and easy to understand as the art world in general, which is kind of fine. Okay? Because people who understand that world understand that kind of pricing, and that might be an interesting place.
Well, look, James, that's about all we have time for today, but I just want to say a huge thank you to you. Thank you for sharing your fantastic and deep knowledge in this subject, and I wish you all the best with your company and your token, and we sincerely hope.
Well, thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you for inviting me
back
for
on the
this
show in the months to come once it's done.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this CBRE Real Talk podcast. If you'd like to hear more, simply subscribe to our free podcast channels, and please feel free to share this podcast with your contacts on social media. We hope you'll join us again soon.